Hello, everyone. To those just tuning in, welcome. To those who've been checking out sessions throughout the day, welcome back. We hope you're enjoying the content and looking forward to more awesome presentations coming up. A big thank you to our partners and speakers for helping us deliver a fantastic program. A quick reminder to join our Slack channel to interact with other attendees and join selected speakers for Q&A. You can find the link in the menu at the top of this page. Happy viewing.
Yeah, it's a little disconcerting seeing my face 6 foot high. So let's go to the next slide, shall we? Great. So I'm not really going to go through any kind of magical frameworks, any kind of growth hacks. I'm mostly going to just share stories. And just stories about, I guess, some red pill moments that I've been through in my career. And moments that really have changed my perspective. So a lot of the talk today is about perspective. And it's mostly sharing stories. So no lessons today, I don't think. But if you come out today just with a slightly different perspective, I'll be very happy, actually. And these are perspectives about how IT competition, how easy it is actually to lose, and what it takes to win. And my story starts at Skype. So I'll take you back to the beginning of 2009, right? So beginning of 2009, I started as a PM at Skype. Got to work with some great people. We worked on a ton of features. So got to work on group video calling, led the team on video messaging, started looking at mobile, around screen sharing and Skype Wi-Fi, like a whole ton of features, right? And in the first, let's say, year, 18 months, we got to see great growth, like 50% growth in active users, in revenue. All was good. And so a lot of that time was spent in product development. But around the same time, 2009, this thing popped up, which some may or may not be familiar with. This thing was referred to as a netbook. And the netbook was seen as like the next big thing, right? And it was this mini laptop, if you like. You kind of needed these like midget fingers when I think about it in hindsight. It's kind of strange. So these things were like packed high in PC world. And so analysts were talking about this as the next big thing. But of course, there was this thing here. In fact, I managed to dig out my old iPhone 3, right? Dinky little thing. Not many people had these. You'd be surprised. It wasn't that common, even in 2009. No front-facing camera. The battery life sucked. Calling quality was awful. And yet there were still some experts, some kind of crazy folks saying that this is going to be the next big thing, the smartphone. And at Skype, we were actually having a conversation about this, like, where do we invest? What's going to be big? What's going to be huge? Where do we put our resources? But you guys know how this story plays out, right? So people moved very quickly to mobile, and they went from calling to messaging also very, very quickly. Right? So we saw this shift, not just in technology, but actually in societal trends. But 2009 was also the year that WhatsApp launched. Almost to the day, actually. They are a whisker away from having 2 billion active users. So just think about that. That's a quarter of the planet using this app every single day. Right? And in the intermediary time, Skype went into decline. So, why did WhatsApp succeed where Skype failed? Right? So I got to see the kind of the rise and the fall, if you like, and the rise as well as WhatsApp. And it's very interesting to see how that played out. So, let's look into that and reverse engineer this. So as I see it, there are like 3 legs to the strategic stool. And the first one is that they had a very simple interface, which you might think, yeah, like Isn't that like we always, that's obviously that's important. That's almost like table stakes these days, right? But bear in mind, prior to this, you had kind of these instant messaging apps. You know, you'd be online and you'd be offline, and you'd just talk to the people who are online, right? Well, WhatsApp changed that entirely. They did away with the whole online, offline. In fact, I remember a friend of mine asked me, like, are you using WhatsApp? And it was below my radar at the time, kind of a year after it had been launched. And I said, no, what is it? And she said to me, it's like free SMS. Like free SMS. I don't think that's how it works. But when she showed me the interface, I could see what she meant. As far as she was concerned, it was free SMS, right? And if you know how to use SMS, you know how to use this app. You didn't have to be particularly sophisticated to use this. And it also obviously had very low battery consumption. Second, they built a critical mass in a very short space of time. One way they did that is blurring the lines between sending a message and inviting someone to WhatsApp. So you look at your contact list, and if they're on WhatsApp, that's great. You know, you send the message, and if they're not, it just transformed that message into an invite, okay? They also developed these tier 2, tier 3 telco partnerships. So they got WhatsApp pre-installed. And so from the get-go, they had a few 100,000 people already using this thing, okay? And this really helped ignite their growth. But it was this third leg that I think was the killer move, right? Kind of a bit of an aha moment for me. And again, just bear in mind, before this, it's so easy to forget, right? Like previous experiences, when you acclimate to this new experience. But before this, you had to first sign into the app. You actually had to sign in to the app. And often you forget that password, right? And so people just sign up again. And then you had to find your friend. And if they were called John Smith, you know, good luck with that. And like your friend might call themselves, I don't know, like Gumball 3000, right? And then, you know, again, you're just not going to find them at that point unless they specifically tell you that name. Then you had to, you know, assuming you found them, you had to then send a contact request. They then had to accept the contact request. And if you were both online at the exact same time, you can start a conversation. So this whole process, right, could take days, if not a week. In some cases, I've heard of multiple weeks, yeah? WhatsApp came along and removed all 5 friction points immediately, right? So they, you know, you think about it, it's a big game changer there. So think about it, like WhatsApp, they don't really have many features, right? Kind of to Evelyn's comment. I mean, really? I talked about all the features we're working on at Skype. You know, we had over 1,000 people working at Skype. WhatsApp, at the time of acquisition, had 55. Right? $19 billion, 55 employees. So their strategy was actually super, super simple. How can we reduce time to first conversation to almost nothing? That's what they focused on. That's what they doubled down on. Because they knew that if you can get you connected to your contacts immediately, job done. So let's think about this another way. So here's Skype, here's some competitors, and really our attention went to people like us, to be honest. It went to desktop calling apps. And so, you know, WhatsApp wasn't really on our radar. You know, I didn't pick up on them maybe until a year after we'd launched, maybe a bit longer. And even when they did appear, we kind of barely paid any attention to them. When we paid attention to them, though, they were quite a different app. So, we were really a desktop calling app, and they were a mobile messaging app. They're actually competing by a slightly different dimension. So in some ways, it was very easy to think, they're not really a competitor. But of course, we were all in the business of communications. And so it didn't take very long for them to be front-on competitor to us. And by that time, it was too late, right? So your competition is often not who you think it is, right? Because you pay attention to the competitor that's in front of you, right? The competitor that you see. But let's just take an extreme version of this. So if I take this quote from Justin Kan. So Justin Kan, if you don't know, from the US, he's the founder of Justin TV. Then he flipped that to Twitch, which he then, I think, sold on to Amazon. So this is an interesting way to think about it, right? Well, actually, who here works in B2B? Hands up if you work in B2B. All right, B2B. So I would say, and actually, who's a B2B startup as well? Okay, a couple of you, right? So I would say with some of you in B2B, let's say maybe 20%, 25%, you're actually probably competing with a spreadsheet, like Google Sheets, actually, or Microsoft Excel, right? But your attention obviously goes to your obvious competitor, right? So if I kind of read between the lines, what Justin's saying is there's actually a much larger addressable market out there. You just don't always see it. So let's go through a few examples, and permit me to go abstract here. So imagine this is you, and these are your competitors, right? What if you could compete by a different dimension and thereby change the basis of competition itself? Okay, I can see I've lost some of you, so maybe let's go specific. But first, a pop quiz. So the year is 1997. The first feature film gets commercially released. Anyone guess what that film is? I'll give you a clue. Any ideas? Twister. Blue Peter badge to the girl at the front. Yes, it's Twister. And the following year, Netflix gets launched. So actually, Netflix are in the business, actually, let's call it the V1 of Netflix, are in the business of DVD delivery. Right? And probably the biggest player on the block in this entertainment space is Blockbuster. Actually, so who here has a Netflix subscription, by the way? Okay, that's like almost everyone. And who here has actually heard of Blockbuster? Oh, wow, okay, maybe about half. Okay, I'm surprised. But for the other half, just because it kind of worked like this. It sounds so antiquated now when I say this, but the idea is you walk to your local high street, okay, and you go to this kind of bricks and mortar shop, and you browse these DVDs. Actually, there were VHS cassettes at the time. You'd browse these, and you choose a movie, and you rent it out for the day, for the night, and pay $3. Return the following day. Okay. Again, remember, this is like I'm taking you back a decade or two here. So don't underestimate Blockbuster. Blockbuster was a $6 billion business. They were huge, right? And they were on, especially in the US, they were everywhere. They were part of your high street. I mean, the high street today is, I don't know, hairdressers and charity shops. But back then, you'd have Blockbuster there too. So Blockbuster, didn't really pay attention to Netflix. They're like, yeah, that's kind of DVD by post business. That's not what we do. It took them believe it or not, 6 years before they even recognized them as a competitor, in that's when they went into the business of DVD delivery. Okay, 6 years later, right? And then in 2007, Netflix start streaming content. Probably the business that most of you know them for, right? Streaming content. And again, other players come up in this space. Some you may vaguely remember back in the day. And Blockbuster, again, slow to react. So it takes them another 4 years after this to react to this, okay, to 2011. And they're like, yeah, we're in the business of streaming content too. Actually, it makes them bankrupt. So they can't maintain their bricks and mortar store as well as these kind of huge server farms, right? That weren't cheap back in the day, right? So I'm not even sure AWS was even around back then. So they go, a few other players disappear, and we're just left with a few players. And in fact, Amazon choose to come in. They actually acquire LoveFilm. That's why Amazon Video is based in London. Yeah, and Amazon are like, yeah. We're in the business of streaming content as well. So, interesting. So, you know, they're in the DVD delivery business. They're now in streaming content. And it was their next move was where they really made their name. Because then they bought House of Cards. They didn't just buy House of Cards. They put all their poker chips on the table. They paid $100 million for 2 seasons up front for House of Cards. This was unheard of. And this is for a company that doesn't even do content, okay? House of Cards is a huge success, and their subscriptions go through the freaking roof, right? At a tear. So how did Netflix get so lucky? Well, they've been watching you for the last 6 years. They know what you're watching. They saw what you rewind, what you forward, what you pause. They actually know the shows that you like. They know the moment of addiction, right? They actually know the day that you got addicted and the exact moment you got addicted. That's how much data they have on you, right? They also saw the gaps in the market. They could see that any time they put political drama on, it got just soaked up straight away. And the likes of Kevin Spacey, at least back in 2013, kind of changed a bit now. But in 2013, Kevin Spacey and David Fincher, right, who was the director, they had huge following. They have this data, right? So, I mean, people were telling them they were crazy at the time. What the hell are you doing? Right? But this wasn't a creative decision as far as they're concerned. I mean, this was maths. So they kind of shifted the dynamic somewhat, right? They knew this was going to be a success. It was just a case of how much. So Netflix are now in the business of content creation, right? In the business of content creation. So this is the second flip, right? Flipped their business twice already. And they have some very interesting bedfellows now. Because now they have HBO. In the UK, we refer to this as Sky Atlantic. Sky, I think, paid $150 million for 5 years rights for HBO content. Disney as well, okay? And they very quickly realize they have a new competitor in town. And they're scared because Netflix understands their customers 100 times better. I mean, that's not even an exaggeration. It's more than that. It's just because these other guys do not have this level of data that they do. So, of course, Disney starts Disney Plus. So their kind of flagship show is Star Wars Mandalorian. HBO, as you probably know, is Game of Thrones. and they start HBO Go in America, so they go direct to consumer there. And of course, Netflix during this time, sorry, I should say Amazon during the time, like, yeah, we do content creation too, right? In fact, they paid, I heard recently, they paid, check this, $250 million for the rights for Lord of the Rings TV show, right? So this is their own Game of Thrones. So this is huge money now we're talking about, huge money. So Reed Hastings, the CEO, right? He doesn't stay awake at night thinking about HBO and Disney. He thinks about competition in a very different way. Okay? By the way, I would argue wine is not a competitor, it's a complement. But that's a different story. So the way he thinks about it is anything that you do at the end of an evening to unwind, that's the competition. That's a much, much bigger market than focusing on the likes of Disney and HBO. Right? So let's think about this. What would you do, right? So you're now the CEO of Netflix. We're about to hit 2020. This landscape has become very, very crowded, right? I mean, I don't have space here for Apple TV, for Hulu, for Gaia. I mean, there are a whole host of other players. Netflix have flipped their business twice already. But what are you going to do in 2020? So let's play that game. Think about this. Think about other attributes that you can compete by. So, okay, we're gonna unwind at the end of the day. Maybe you crack open your Xbox, yeah, play a game, right, in front of the TV anyway. Well, what if Netflix did that? What if Netflix transformed their content into gaming? You watch an episode, boom. You want to watch the next episode or play a game? You know, immerse into that episode, immerse into that content. Would not surprise me if they enter into that space. In fact, I did hear recently they started licensing some of their content to other gaming companies. I think it was Stranger Things. Netflix and chill. They're competing with a chill, man. I don't know, maybe they move into the hotel business, paid by the hour, who knows. But actually, on a more serious note, they could start, for example, and this might be a bit off-brand, but they could start, let's say, Netflix X, right? Where they have much more R-rated content. So whether it be horror, whether it be 18-rated action, and the like. So maybe they segment some of the content away from, that gets mixed with family content. Maybe they just partition that off as a premium service. Also, in an evening, you might want to go out with friends. Maybe it's a more social event and you watch a movie, right? So you go for a meal and movie. They could, for example, partner with some cinema chains and have some exclusive content showing at these in the cinema. So maybe you have your Netflix Plus subscription and you go in, maybe you have some director commentary, maybe you have some post-movie analysis, right? Some special content just for Netflix users. I don't think it's particularly scalable, but it's an option. Or maybe you could bring those friends into Netflix, right? What if you're watching a show and you have your friends that are on Netflix? They kind of actually start experiencing it with you and you can see them on the roster, on your TV. Maybe you could share the emotions with them, right? The moments they cry, the moments they laugh. Okay, have a much more immersive experience. There are many ways that we can start thinking about competition now, right? And that's just a few of them. So let's just reflect back on this. If you focus on the product, guess what? You're going to get more product. Okay? I'm saying a different version of what Evelyn said, I think, and Tom. But But actually, you know, at the beginning, maybe that's fine, right? But eventually you're going to hit a brick wall. You're going to hit this kind of principle here, this principle of minimum differentiation, which states that over time, you end up looking like your competitor, right? So who's been working in product for more than, say, 4 years? Okay, so like a quarter of you, right? So some of you may have observed this, because guess what happens? Your competitor gets feature A. And do you know what your execs and your customers ask for? Feature A. Bloody well build feature A. We need feature A. Everyone's talking about feature A. Let's build feature A. Guess what you do? You build feature A. But you know what's also happening? When you build feature B, your competitor's having the same conversation, right? And they build kind of a similar version to what you have. And over time, and that's why I mentioned 4 years, like over time, over this period of time, it's like this death by 1,000 cuts, self-inflicted cuts actually, but you don't even notice it. You don't even pick it up originally. So, you know, you get to this space where the only difference between you and a competitor is a tick box. And that is a game you do not want to play. I just picked some random thing from the internet there. So when you go back, I would ask yourself a few questions here. So one is, ask your colleagues, what business are we in? And they're probably going to be a bit confused, to be honest, because they're either going to think it's just super obvious and thinking, what the hell are you asking me that for? Or they don't actually know. And kind of both are worrying, to be honest. So start that conversation. And also think about who or what you're competing with, right? Think about the different attributes that you can compete by. Because if you imagine that this is the market you're in, okay, and you're all trying to find, you know, your own slice of the pie. And that's really hard, right? It gets very cutthroat. But if you can look and find another attribute to compete by, then there's actually a much bigger market out there. And it's kind of this invisible pie. Look for that invisible pie. So look for other attributes to compete by, yeah, look for other ways to differentiate yourself. Look for the invisible pie. So with that, I thank you for your time. I'm going to assume we have questions here or not. Are we out of time? How are we doing? All good? Okay, I'm giving thumbs up for questions. So we're going to switch to Slido. Okay, what's more important, identify and react quickly to the competition by copying what works, or listen to your users and innovate to solve their needs? The latter. To keep it really simple. It's really easy to pay attention to your competition, but actually, what you're doing is you're paying attention to solutions, actually. Pay attention to problems. So spend way more time. I'm not saying ignore your competition. Obviously, you need to always keep an eye out for any innovations they have, but pay a lot more attention to the problems that your users experience. So, you know, that's kind of your greatest hack, honestly, is user research. Really understand what's going on there with your customers. So next, what is the biggest takeaway from the WhatsApp story? What is the biggest takeaway? So for me, the biggest takeaway is really around this idea of understanding who your competition is. It's very easy to dismiss some players because they're not seen as competition. And you need to have a much wider sense of what competition is. Like I said, I mentioned a spreadsheet earlier. Sometimes your competition is a paper and pen, right? Sometimes your competition, as Justin Kan talked about it, is apathy. Sometimes your competition is awareness. And I don't just mean awareness of the solution. I mean even the awareness that they have a problem, right? 100 years ago, I'm riding my horse. I'm happy with my horse, man. I've got my saddle, got the reins, it's all cool. And I ask what's wrong, and like, hey, actually, could you just, like, these reins are chafing, and like this saddle's a bit uncomfortable, can you improve that? Then I see a car, I'm like, I want one of those, right? I didn't know I had a problem until I saw the car. So actually, that's more of a product marketing problem, like how you frame that, being aware of that problem. Maybe that's that room over there, I don't know. Cool, next. Why does Skype think I'd always want to buy my contacts Skype credits for their birthday? I'm assuming that's a joke. Good question. Don't know. I'll ask a few friends. Next, if you go back in time, would you have done anything differently at Skype? Yeah, that's a hard one. So I have to say, our organization had grown quite a bit. Like I say, we were like 1,000 plus. So put it this way, if I was able to make all the decisions, for sure I would have done something differently, which is to double down on mobile and mobile messaging. We would say we're in the business of communication, but we behave like we're in the business of desktop calling. We did not pay enough attention to mobile. Right? We effectively took our desktop app, we retrofitted it, put it into mobile, and then effectively everyone treated the phone like a hand warmer because it would just boil. It was so hot. We did not optimize for mobile. We should have. It was hard for us to do that because Skype, I don't know if you know, but Skype is a contraction of the word Sky, peer-to-peer. So it's a peer-to-peer service. And so that was great on desktop. It sucked on mobile. So we'd have to change the whole architecture. And that's what happens actually, is when you start actually maturing, after a while it becomes very hard for you to move outside of that space. So we should have reacted sooner. Okay, I think we're out of questions. Thank you very much.